What's up, guys? It's John here, and I'm gonna cover the NBA games, even though, well, one starts in like an hour. I'm not too positive on that one, but I actually wanted to go into the draft. Figured I could have waited, but I'm just going to put these couple theories out here because it was an interesting draft. So, obviously, the biggest story is Shedeur being drafted late, and I would say assuming, now I believe it's scripted, but let's just say it's not scripted, it would make no sense not to take this man in the first 3 rounds, and I'll explain why. There have been quarterbacks that have played like Shedeur in college, and usually when they're scouted and you look at the fundamentals of the quarterbacks, they use way more of those analytics that come from the fundamentals than the stats themselves. So you have a lot of quarterbacks in the past who were really good in college, better than Shedeur, and didn't get drafted, things like that. So him going in like the fourth would normally make sense, except for the fact that if you're an owner, you would. I know, I'm just thinking here. You would want to, just like Tim Tebow. People drafted him because he was a merch seller. He was a draw. So you'd think one of these teams might just have drafted him just for that reason. He might put a few more butts in the seats, even if he's not starting. Just him being there, Dion maybe being at the games because he could coach on Saturday and attend the game on Sunday. So I just feel like it was didn't make sense outside of it being scripted, and it's a whole kind of redemption kind of story thing. Make him a very likable guy. Then he gets snubbed in the draft. A lot of people are saying he's getting heat, because of stuff Dion did, all these different things. It makes him look really humble that he was very appreciative with that scripted video after he got drafted, all that stuff. So I think that's really what happened. I think they just agreed it would be a good story for Shedeur if he was drafted later. So to me, that makes, in my opinion, it more likely that they are going to set him up to succeed. Whereas Travis Hunter might not. I think he's going to be fine. I think they want Dion's crew to look really good. Even Shiloh might get some. He'll probably get some snaps for the Bucks. But yeah, I think that's what's going on with Shedeur. Now, what I like to do is look at, again, I try and look at it like if it's scripted or if it's real. So, for example, I remember Hendon Hooker going in like the third, fourth round last year, and a much inferior, Levi's goes in the first. And I'm like, this doesn't make any sense outside of a scripted league. I think Hendon Hooker might get some starts in the next year or two, and I think he's going to be a guy to watch. So I like looking at certain teams. Obviously, we're covering the NBA. By the way, I just wanted to knock this out. Not seeing NFL. I guess the draft. We'll get to it. I wanted to look at the teams. So I looked at the Vegas over under for a lot of these teams, and that's what helps me decide who I'm going to like. Obviously, going into next season, right? Like if Vegas has a team getting 5 wins, they probably have a good reason for that, especially if it's a team that normally gets more than 5 wins. So right now we're only seeing NFL draft. I'll just go this way. And we're going to look at the teams this way. This is last year's records, obviously. So, and I'm basically, while I'm at it, I guess going to do a early prediction. I already did an early prediction. To be honest, I don't even remember who I picked because, again, it's until we have official starting lineups and stuff like that going into the season, I think it's kind of foolish. I mean, anything can happen. Any big guy can get traded and really change it up. But what I will say is the Bills right here, I think if there's a year that they're going to win the Super Bowl, it's going to be this year. And I do think Allen's going to get one just so they can float, I believe. Because they have a couple years left. An Allen-Mahomes rivalry. At this point, it's not much of a rivalry when one guy's won them all. With Brady Manning, they at least gave Manning a couple. So I could see him winning a Super Bowl this year, and then maybe in 2 years knocking Mahomes out of the AFC Championship, something like that. or divisional round. Maybe, I think Allen gets one or two in his career. I don't think he gets a ton. But yeah, I think with everything, I think also people aren't looking at the Bills as a Super Bowl team. They're looking at them as perennial failures. And this is the logic I used when I picked the Celtics last year to win the whole thing, and the Lakers this year to win the whole thing. People call them failures. Oh, they always let people down like the Cowboys. So I feel like since nobody's going to be on the Bills, not many people at least, they make sense. Miami's a tough read right now, just because I don't know what's going on with Tua. It almost feels like they just don't know what's going on with the team. And I don't see, even though their coach is very liked, like Mike McDaniels, whatever his name is, I don't see him. I think by now they would have had a run or something with him. The fact that they haven't, I'm getting serious. They might tank this year and fire him vibes. And I think the Jets are going to be pretty bad too, which means I think the Patriots are actually a great team to pick on the over for wins. And it's not just because they got, I think they did get Ashton Genty, who the Bears completely botched, but I'll get into that. But they got a good running back, obviously. Drake May strong. And a year or two removed from Belichick. Of course, their first year is going to be a bad one. I feel like the Patriots could finish with like a 7-10, 8-9 record, which is above Vegas's expected over/under. I think they have them getting like 6.5 or 7.5 wins. So for the divisions, I actually think it goes Buffalo, New England. I'll say Jets, Miami. I think that's what we get for this division. And then this one's like one of the toughest to call. We have no idea what's going to happen with Sanders and the Browns, obviously. I do think Cincinnati's winning the division. I think, well, I think they're going to have a very good year. Because you can win the division, losing the first round of the playoffs. But I'll say I do think Cincinnati wins the division. I think Baltimore comes in second. Pittsburgh third. I think Cleveland still finishes last. And I don't see much. I think the AFC Championship very well might be Cincinnati, Buffalo. Just because I think they made a point of showing, like, oh, we're keeping our guys. We're paying them more money. We're appreciating them. Burrow's doing nice things for the team. It's really been a while since the Bengals did anything. So I think of any year, this year it would make sense to at least get Burrow a couple notches. Maybe he wins MVP and has a great game in the AFC Championship. And again, I could see him beating, Josh Allen. I'm not like I have the Bucks or the Bills right now as my pick. They are my official pick, but it's not one where it's like this year, like I liked Lakers Celtics so much, or last year where I really liked Celtics Mavs, and the only other team that made sense besides the Mavs last year for me was the Clippers. With this one, I could see Buffalo or Cincinnati would not shock me. There's a couple teams that wouldn't shock me. And yeah, I think Baltimore makes the playoffs, does okay. I think we get a drop-off year for them. And Pittsburgh just gets a winning record, probably 9-8, so Tomlin can keep that streak alive. Now this is an interesting one. I don't know why, I just have this feeling. So, the Jaguars win expected. So Vegas had them at 7.5, which I thought was low because, yeah, they had a really bad year. But if you look at this team over the last several years, they've made the playoffs. Trevor Lawrence went healthy. They've played well. And this year is kind of an outlier. Like, they won the division, I thought, last year. I guess 2 years ago at this point. So, for one bad year, I thought 7.5 is just a low total. They have them, I think they have the Colts at 7.5 too. And I think Vegas might know something. Because now they have Hunter, and they're still at 7.5, which I think is just low. I would take the Jags on the under to get under 7.5 wins this year. Maybe the year I think they're going to move on from Trevor Lawrence. I said this, and actually this fits my theory, because they did I believe they traded up to get Hunter, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe they did. No, I think they had to, because there's teams with worse records, and we have the Giants and the Browns, and I think there's a few others. Anyway, I said that they were going to finish with the worst record, with the logic being they were going to draft Travis Hunter or the best player in the draft is what I said, or one of the best, because to me it just made sense. It just seemed like they were going to add somebody to Trevor Lawrence or move on from that experience. So the fact that they got Hunter, they're going to obviously stick with Lawrence, maybe at least another year, and then maybe they get a quarterback next year. But I think they have a rough year. But yeah, that was the reason. And people kept clowning on me saying like, and I guess I was wrong because they're like, oh, the Jags aren't going to get one of the best picks. There's way other teams that are going to have better picks, and that's true. But my logic was the Jags were going to draft a great pick, and they did trade up to I think the number 2 spot. So I think we had a pretty good read on them. Again, I think Houston wins the division pretty decisively. They have no signs of slowing up C.J. Stroud, so unless there's an injury. And then I think it's going to be like the same as last year with this division. I like Indy to finish in second place. It doesn't seem like they love Richardson that much, but I think they're going to give him at least a little bit of a shot. And then I got Jacksonville and Tennessee. This one's a very interesting one. The Raiders are obviously an interesting team this year. They are what I call an X Factor team. And then they got just a few pieces that I think are going to help, and I thought they had a decent draft. I don't think they do anything crazy, but I don't think Denver's making the playoffs again. I don't know why they did. Bo Nix isn't a draw. I think Bo Nix is going to have a terrible year. Just a prediction. So you know how quarterbacks will come out and have a great first year. Bo Nix did that. I think this year, I think Drake May moves upward and Bo Nix moves much downward. That's just kind of my logic right now. We'll see if I'm wrong. I think the Chargers are an interesting one too. I've never been sold on Herbert. I could see something like Kansas City, Raiders, Chargers, Broncos, something like that. I could even see maybe the Chargers winning the division. But essentially, I think the Broncos are going to finish with less than. I think there is at 8.5 for the Vegas line. Sometimes they move. I like them going under on their games. I like the Raiders going over on theirs. They're at like 5.5 or 6.5. I think it's 6.5 now. I like the Raiders to go over on them. I like the Chiefs. They're at 11.5. I like them to actually go under. I think they're going to lose a couple divisional games this year. And you'll hear the narratives, oh, is the dynasty dead, So I could see the Chiefs finishing 10-7, something like that. And I think the Chargers, basically same type of record, 9-8, 10-7. I like the Chargers and Chiefs to get in the playoffs. So just to go through the playoff teams that I like, just to summarize this, I like the Bills to make the playoffs. I like the Bengals to make the playoffs. I like the Ravens to make the playoffs. I like the Texans to make the playoffs. I like the Chiefs to make the playoffs. I like the Chargers to make the playoffs, which means we have to find a 7th team. I don't think it's going to be Pittsburgh this year. I don't think it's going to be Denver this year. So we're looking at like the Raiders for the 7th team. You know what? I'm actually going to go with the Patriots to be the 7th team to make the playoffs. I just like it. I think Drake May, and especially the way they're pushing the running backs, I think Janty's going to have himself a heck of a year. So yeah, that's what I like in the AFC. The NFC, and again, a lot of this is based off their draft picks. I thought that, again, Patriots, great first round pick. Other teams went defense, obviously. Other teams went with linemen. The Browns, we'll see what happens with Sanders. So for the NFC here, Eagles, I think they have another strong year because, again, I think when you have a champion, at least for the next year, we're seeing it in the NBA at Boston, you have to make them look like you're taking, this new team is actually beating a team that's strong, a strong champion. And if you win and then you come out and don't make the playoffs or something, I don't know. I think it's a little anticlimactic for the Super Bowl. I think it's a lot more of a story when you have to beat the Eagles. So say a team in the NFC, let's just say the Lions have to knock off the Eagles on their way to the Super Bowl. I think that makes a lot more sense. So I think the Eagles have a good year. I think they're at 12.5 on their wins. It's either 11.5 or 12.5, and I'm gonna take the over. I don't know if they go 14-3 again, but I can see 13-4. If it's 11.5, I am 12.5 makes a lot of sense. But yeah, I think they have a fine year, and Dallas complete rebuild mode. So I think Dallas finishes exactly where they did last year, maybe even a little worse. And kind of same with the Giants. I don't see much with either of these teams. And I think Washington does okay again. Maybe not 12-5, but 9-8, 10-7. They've made improvements. They theoretically should be better. And I think people like Jaden. So I'd say about 10 wins makes sense for them. We got the NFC North, an interesting division. So we have the Lions. You see how 3 of the 4 teams made the playoffs. And honestly, after the first round, I was saying I can see why the Bears continuously disappoint their fans, including a good friend of mine who is a hopeless Bears romantic. And it's just because right now I feel like the Bears are more marketable than they were before. Like in the 80s and 90s, I wasn't around watching it, but I know how marketable they were. They've always had a strong fan base. So Bears fans are always excited about the Bears. And the first round, I thought they should have made a move to get Genty. Again, in a real or fake league, it just makes sense to get the guy. But they didn't. They got a tight end, and he was a good, like a solid pick. I just think they could have made a move and got a much better one. But then in the second round, they got Luther Burton, who I think is going to be the best receiver out of the class. I just, the way they treated him in college, the way he looks NFL ready, and you already have an experience. I think they still have Keenan Allen. You got DJ Moore, the other guy Rome Adunze, whatever his name is, and now you got the tight end in the first round, and then you add Luther Burden. I think it's all to make Caleb look really good. So I think Caleb has a huge step forward this year. The coaching is also an indicator, because when teams bring in likable coaches that are known to not mess up games, typically they do better. It's pretty straightforward. Vegas has them at 8.5, I think, or it's 7.5 or 8.5. I think it's 8.5, and I like the over. So Vegas is basically saying they're probably going to be a winning team this year, after going 5-12 and not making any crazy moves outside of coaching. So when Vegas is saying that they're going to get 4 more wins essentially, it makes me think that they have a much better year. And I said this year and I was wrong. I think we see a pretty significant drop-off by Minnesota. And Green Bay too, now that I mention it. I think it's going to go Detroit, Chicago, and then probably Packers, Vikings this next year. Maybe Vikings, Packers. But I think Chicago has a pretty good year. And Detroit, pretty obvious. I think they have another very strong year. When I'm looking at playoff matchups, I actually like Lions-Bills a lot. I think that was my original. I've made one video so far, obviously, before this for this season coming up, and I think I did go Detroit, Buffalo. Now, I do also remember liking the appeal of Buffalo, San Francisco, and I'll go into that in a minute. But again, Detroit I thought had an okay draft. They didn't really need too much anyway. But they've lost some coaching, so I think they might take a step back. But like as far as their wins, I don't think they're going to 15-2. But I can see them making a playoff run. So like Bills Niners or Bills Lions is what I'm liking right now. And again, I would take the Lions under on their wins. I think they're gonna finish like 10-7, 11-6, which is under the 12.5 that Vegas likes. And now we're on the NFC South. Bucks, I really don't. It's hard to tell with them. I think because we saw Penix get moved up and starting over Cousins now, and we saw how Bijan Robinson has evolved. The Bucks are kind of getting older. They've been in the playoffs the last couple of years. I think this year it's the Falcons that win the division. I thought they were going to this last year, and I think I was a year early on some of these teams. So I think I go something like Atlanta. Carolina's weird going back and forth, Bryce, so it's hard to tell what they're going to do there. I could see New Orleans finishing second, and then like Tampa, Carolina. Again, probably a close division, but I'm definitely taking the Bucks under on their total wins. I'm definitely liking the Falcons over on their total wins. Carolina and Saints, tougher reads. I just think they finish middle of the, not middle of the pack, subpar, 7-10, something. Maybe even one of these two teams is probably going to finish worse than this year. I just have a feeling. And then we got the Rams, Seahawks, Cardinals, Niners. So Niners finished last, which is just was very unexpected. I think it was an outlier. I don't think it's a sign of things to come. I think if they don't win the division, I think they come in second. But I think they win the division. I'm loving now. Vegas has a high number for their win total. I think they have a 10.5. And as far as that, it's a close one. I'm not sure whether they go over or under. I would lean over just because it's a pretty big jump from the year they had. I think they're going to be healthy. They didn't really lose any of their stars, and I think they like Purdy. So I like the Niners. Then you go Rams. I think with losing Cup, they're kind of moving on. We're going to see some rebuilding. So I think the Rams are going to finish below 500. The Seahawks, same kind of deal. They lost a couple guys. I think they finish below 500. And I think the Cardinals finish above 500. So something like Niners, Cardinals, Rams, Seahawks is kind of how I see this division going. And I'll go into the 7 playoff teams. I think it's going to be the Eagles. I think it's going to be the Lions. I think it's going to be the Falcons. I think it's going to be the Niners. I do think the Commanders are going to get back in. That's 5. I think the Cardinals will get in. That's 6. And I think the Bears are going to get in. So 7. Those are my playoff teams. And yeah, like I said, I thought a few teams had better drafts than others. But with Luther Burden for the Bears, it really makes me like them to make a run up, possibly NFC Championship. Cam Ward, I just don't think he's going to come in and tear it up. We have too many quarterbacks already. I feel like you need to space them out a little bit. I think, okay, it was the Raiders that got Genty. I don't know why I thought the Patriots did. I still think they'll be fine. I think Drake May is going to have a much better year. Obviously, they added protection, but so the Raiders, okay. Yeah, and I said, I think the Raiders are going to have a better year. I think they might surprise people. So honestly, now with Genty, it makes it even more likely. Kind of fits what I was saying. I think they might. So I think I had the Patriots as the 7th playoff team. I would actually replace them with the Raiders. I really thought the Patriots got Genty. I don't know why. But anyway, Jets really didn't do much. McMillan's a good receiver, but again, I think of all these teams, the biggest winners are your Raiders, the Bears, and not because of this Loveland pick. They should have moved up, I think. They could have moved up. But we'll look at it in the second round. The Bucks did get a good receiver to add to the staff. I just don't think it's going to make that much of a difference. And of all the defenders, like in the first round at least, of all the defensive players that were taken, I actually think we're going to see, especially with their scheme, Michael Williams make the biggest difference. Just because I know a lot of people think Carter's much, much better. I don't. And just based off of, again, booking perspectives and things like that, like Carter can make a difference for the Giants, sure, but I think Williams is going to come out on that feisty defense and look pretty relentless. So I could see, again, I think the Niners bounce back pretty strong this year, and we won't go into every round because I don't know all these guys, but again, the Browns, they went defense pretty heavy in this draft, and here's where the Bears, I don't know why. I think Burden's the best receiver in the draft, but he's not the tallest, but that doesn't matter really in the NBA now. I think being shorter actually helps. Saints making a big deal about Tyler Shell here, so I expect him to maybe, again, that's why I said the Saints, I think, do better than last year and probably flip the Bucks, just because they're really making a big deal about this guy. I'm not sure if he's going to start. He probably won't start right away, but I'm sure at some point he'll get put in there. A good running back for the Browns, so that's interesting. And yeah, Luther Burden here is just a monster. He's 6 foot, so he's not that much undersized. But he's just a guy that reminds me of Worthy, where he was big. Xavier Worthy, I would say, had a pretty good year, and the guy from the Chiefs, I always forget his name. Um, or I think I mixed them up, Worthy and Favors, because their names are words, and I always mix them up. It's like Isaiah Likely. I always mix these guys up because their words are names, and it throws me off, just like Burden's a name. But anyway, like these other guys, I just feel like he's going to have himself a pretty strong first year and make Caleb look really good. So that was, in my opinion, made up for it for the Bears after their not so good first round. And they had a couple picks in the second. You could just see they're protecting Caleb, and I don't even know who Turner is, to be honest. RJ Harvey, I did see playing some at UCF. I'm surprised he fell so far. I think he's going to have a fine year for the Broncos. I still think the Broncos are going to suck, but I think we'll have a fine year. And Trey Harris is another receiver that I think is going to have himself a good year. Obviously, you think they would have snagged Burden if he fell. The Chargers, he definitely would have been a strong pick for a Jim Harbaugh offense. But yeah, I think based off the draft, you can kind of see, and where Vegas has these guys, just kind of who's going to be pushed. Like Tyler Show is going to be pushed, whereas other quarterbacks, I don't. I think Cam Ward, I don't want to call him a bust, but I just don't think he's going to do anything crazy for the Titans. I think he's going to have an okay year. Hunter, I think Hunter has a fine year. I just, again, don't have that much faith in the Jags. And yeah, I'm looking out for Genti. He's probably my early pick for Rookie of the Year, if I'm being honest. Ashton Genti here. I think he makes a lot of sense. So yeah, that's basically all I have for the season. And like I said, I did want to just, while I'm here, cover NBA. We're looking pretty good in the series. Like, as far as... So I do have the Pistons upsetting the Knicks. We're down 1-2 there. And I have the Lakers moving on, of course. Down 1-2 there. In Boston, I have winning. So we're winning on that one. And I have Milwaukee. So we're down 1-2 on a lot of these. But again, a lot of them are because the home road divide. Like the Knicks took one in Detroit. Detroit took one in the Garden. So Detroit back at home should probably win this one, tie it up. Same thing with Milwaukee. And I think Magic will make it a little more interesting than I thought originally, but it's still going to be Boston. And I think I went into how I could see the Lakers in one of these series actually drop into 1-3 and coming back and winning. I still think they're going to knot it up at 2-2. I actually wonder if they all do it, and then they do some narrative like, oh, it's the first time every team in the not every team, but quite a few teams are 2-2. It's going to be exciting. But for tonight, I like the Pistons to knot it up. I like the Lakers to knot it up. So I actually have them parlayed on a money line. I think that's a solid pick. I didn't want to go -2.5 because I could see it being a 1 or 2 point game here. Boston, Orlando, tougher to tell. I'll say Orlando to cover. I think Boston could definitely make it 3-1 though. So I like Orlando to cover though. I think it'll be competitive. And then I like the Bucks to win. But again, I actually like the Bucks to win, but the Pacers to cover the 4.5. I don't think the Bucks drop to 1-3. I do think they advance. I know a lot of people really that don't believe me. They think it's going to be the Pacers that advance. I think the Bucks advance, and yeah, I like the idea of a lot of 2-2 series. And another one I like here in the Boston Orlando is I like the under. Anything in the NBA, even with slower paced teams, that's set at under 200 points. The public is usually just going to hammer the over because it's such a low spread for the NBA. So I like the under in this game, the under in the 198.5. And yeah, I think Orlando is able to get the cover out. So yeah, maybe, I didn't add them to mine, but if I was just doing straight money line parlay, I would go Pacers. I would skip the Celtics because they're not worth the value. I could see the Magic winning. I would just go Pacers, Lakers, Pistons. I think those three teams win. But again, I do think I'm sorry, I meant to say Bucks, Pistons, Lakers. I think the Bucks win. But I do think the Pacers cover. That's what I was saying. So I think it'll be less than a 4.5 point victory. Maybe a Dame buzzer beater. That kind of makes sense for Milwaukee, in my opinion. So yeah, I just wanted to cover the draft, kind of some NFL futures, and I figured I'd knock out today's games while I was at it. Probably drop this later tonight or very early tomorrow. Well, I'll have to do it later tonight actually, so it's fine. Because I'm not positive yet if I think we're going to get a sweep. I think we most likely do because there's probably going to be at least one sweep. But Houston Golden State's another interesting one because I think it's going to be a feisty series. But again, Golden State can go up 3-1 and then drop a game or two to make it interesting. So I'm going to think on these. Also, tonight's results will kind of affect these. So later tonight, I'll drop the picks for tomorrow for these two games. And yeah, for now, this is what I like for the NBA. So take care and happy earnings.